That afternoon I had just gotten back from Costco, still carrying several bags of groceries, when I saw Justin, my son, standing in the living room. The light came through the window, illuminating his face, but it didn't soften the coldness of his expression. I didn't even have a chance to ask anything before he spoke directly, his voice firm and sharp as a knife. "Mom, I'm tired of seeing you every day." I froze. My hand gripped the plastic handles so tightly they dug into my skin. "What did you just say?" I asked, hoping I had heard him wrong. Justin didn't look away. "I want space, Mom. You're around too much. My wife feels the same way. You should find another place so we can live our own lives." His words hit me like a slap in the face in broad daylight. I heard every syllable as if someone was engraving them into my mind. "This house, I bought it with my money. The deed is still in my name. I paid for it in full, no debt, just because I wanted my son to have a good start. I voluntarily moved into the smallest room. I shared my time to support the couple. And now I've become a burden? Really?" I tried to keep my voice steady even though I felt a rock pressing on my chest. Justin hesitated for a moment, then his tone hardened. "I'm just saying what we both think. You know, my wife has never been comfortable with you here." I looked him in the eyes. "So I put up all the money to buy this house, and in the end I have to leave my own home?" He was silent, a silence that didn't seek an argument, but also showed no regret. Outside, a car passed by, its engine fading into the distance. Inside the house, the only sound left was my heart pounding in my ears. Never in my life did I imagine this day, the day my own son would look at me as if I were an object to be pushed aside when it's no longer useful. I took a deep breath and set the bags on the table. "All right," I said. "Just one word. No arguing, no begging." Justin was a little startled, maybe because he expected me to cry or get angry, but I simply walked to my room and closed the door. With my back against the cold wall, I slid down to the floor. The shock still hadn't faded. I remembered the day I gave him the keys to the house. His face lit up, the promise of Mom will always have a place here. All of that was now just broken fragments of a memory. In the living room, I heard Justin talking to someone on the phone. His voice was light, relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Suddenly, I understood. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a calculated plan, and I was just now getting the notice. My chest tightened, but deep down, another thought began to surface. If they want me to leave, I'll leave. But not empty-handed. I stayed still in the room, listening to the tick-tock of the wall clock, each tick like a hammer blow, clarifying my thoughts. If Justin had decided this, then I would have my own way. Not with tears, not with pleading. My phone vibrated in my purse. It was Martha, my friend since our days at the town library. I answered, trying to sound normal. "Liv, are you free this afternoon? I just made that apple pie you love so much." I managed a faint smile. "Maybe I'll stop by, but first I need your help with something." Half an hour later, I left my room with a small handbag. Justin looked up, frowning. "Where are you going?" "To get some air." "Don't wait up for me," I answered curtly. He was about to say something, but his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and ignored me, as if I had already disappeared from his world. I met Martha at a coffee shop near the commuter rail station. When I told her what happened, her eyes darkened. "He said that to you? In the house that you bought?" I nodded. "I think it's time for me to go, but I'm not going to leave them anything valuable." Martha rested her chin on her hand. Her eyes glinted with a shared understanding. "Are you thinking of selling the house?" "Not just selling it fast and in secret so they don't have time to react. They think I'll just leave quietly, but I'll be the one to take back everything that's mine before I disappear." The plan began that very night. Martha introduced me to a trusted real estate agent, Mr. Jenkins, who had helped her with a messy inheritance issue with a condo. He agreed to meet me privately in his office off the record. Sitting under the warm glow of a desk lamp, we discussed the details. "You want to sell the entire property? The house is in your name, correct?" he asked. "All the legal documents are mine," I replied firmly. Mr. Jenkins smiled. "Then it'll be easy. I have a couple of cash buyers. If you agree, I can close the deal in less than a week." 1 week. Not nearly enough time for Justin and his wife to realize what was happening. I pictured the scene. them coming home after a long day, only to find the house was no longer theirs. And inside I felt an unexpected calm. When I got back home, Justin was already out. The living room was silent. I took one last look at every piece of furniture I had chosen, every photo on the wall. Soon none of it would belong to them anymore. I turned on my computer. I sent a confirmation email to Mr. Jenkins. We start tomorrow. Keep everything absolutely confidential. As I hit send, I noticed my hands were no longer shaking. I was no longer the woman who endured everything in silence in this house. I was preparing to leave, but this time I was taking everything that was mine with me. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The faint autumn light filtered through the curtains, bathing the kitchen in a soft yellow glow. I made a strong pot of coffee. I poured it into my white ceramic mug, sat down at the table, and opened my old leather-bound notebook. Page after page held numbers, dates, and lists of items I had bought for this house. The imported sofa from Italy, the Japanese knives, the dishwasher installed last year. I marked the ones that were small enough to take with me or sell separately. Each red check mark was a memory, but it was also an asset. At 9 o'clock sharp, Mr. Jenkins called. Mrs. Smith, I found a young couple looking for a house in this neighborhood. They're ready to pay in cash, but they want to see it as soon as possible. I replied immediately. Could they come this afternoon? Perfect. Do you want them to meet the family living there? I paused for a moment. No, I'll make sure the house is empty. After hanging up, I knew I had to act carefully. Justin and his wife worked all day, but I needed to be sure they wouldn't come back unexpectedly.
Isen Malasia Sona Text.
I'm having a visitor this afternoon. Don't come home early. Justin replied quickly. Okay, do whatever you want. A reply so brief it confirmed everything to him. My presence in that house no longer meant a thing. Around noon I started packing some of my belongings. I put the valuable items in cardboard boxes and labeled them. I would send them one by one to a storage unit Martha helped me rent. I dragged the boxes to Martha's car parked right outside the door. At 3 o'clock, the buying couple arrived with Mr. Jenkins. They were young, dressed simply, but their eyes lit up as they walked in. They didn't know the story behind the walls. They only saw a warm, clean house full of potential. I guided them through each room, presenting every detail like an experienced salesperson. Though inside I felt both relieved and bitter. We love this house, the wife said, looking at her husband. He nodded. If you agree, we can put down a deposit right now. I looked at Mr. Jenkins. He gave a slight nod, confirming everything was going according to plan. After they left, I locked the door and stood in the middle of the living room. This space had witnessed more than I wanted to remember. Silent dinners, backhanded comments, and the moment Justin bluntly asked me to disappear. I would sleep here one last night not because I had to, but because I chose to. One last look before leaving on my own terms. On the kitchen table, the deposit agreement lay neatly. Everything was in motion, and for the first time in months I was in control. That night I didn't fall asleep right away. I sat by the living room window, watching the streetlights filter through the garden trees. In my hands a cup of hot tea, the steam rising in small spirals, just like the thoughts in my head. My phone vibrated, a text from Justin. Mom, can you watch Chloe tomorrow? Beth wants to go out all day. I smiled, but not with joy. It was a smile of irony. I truly loved my granddaughter Chloe, but Justin's tone made it clear that to them I was nothing more than a free babysitter. I replied, No, imbusi. Just 3 words. But I knew Justin would have to read them several times. I rarely said no to him directly. The next morning I got up early. The sky was hazy, the garden covered in mist. I made coffee and started the day's task, packing. The sound of packing tape sealing boxes was like a final cut, breaking old ties. Around 10 Martha arrived. Her eyes scanned the stacked boxes. You're moving fast, she said. I want to finish before they start asking questions, I replied, handing her a list. This goes to the storage unit. The rest to an auction house. Martha helped me load the rented truck. The driver was a young, quiet, efficient kid. I had already paid a 6-month deposit for the storage unit, enough time to get settled in a new place. In the afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Jenkins. Mrs. Smith, the deposit has been transferred. I'll prepare the final sales contract for you to sign on Friday. I looked at the calendar. Friday was just 3 days away. 3 days to finish everything. And the last 3 days I would live here. That night, Justin and Beth still weren't home. I had dinner alone. A simple bowl of chicken noodle soup with bread. The silence was so deep I could hear the clock ticking. Oddly, I didn't feel lonely. Around 9 they arrived. I was still at the table reading. Beth glanced at the boxes but didn't ask anything. Maybe she thought I was just clearing out some space. Justin was absorbed in his phone. Remember to watch Chloe tomorrow, Beth said, her tone a command, not waiting for a reply. I closed my book. I looked her in the eyes. I already told Justin.
I'm Busse.
She raised her eyebrows, about to argue, but she held back. Maybe my voice surprised her. It was calm but firm. When they went upstairs, I looked around the house one more time. Everything was starting to detach from me, becoming the past, and I knew that when Friday came I would walk out, not as someone who was kicked out, but as someone who chose to leave. On Thursday morning I received an unexpected call from my old lawyer, Mr. Davis, who handled the paperwork when I bought the house. His voice was grave, concerned. Liv, I received some information from a local bank. Someone is trying to use your house as collateral for a large loan. Do you know anything about this? I gripped the phone. No. And who is it? Mr. Davis sighed. The documents were submitted in Justin and Beth's names, but the problem is, he paused. They included a copy of a power of attorney in your name, with a signature identical to yours. I closed my eyes. I wasn't surprised, but the feeling of betrayal was brutal. Mr. Davis, I never signed any power of attorney for them. That has to be a forgery. I believe you. Do you want me to immediately send a request to block the loan and begin a legal verification? Of course, and as quickly as possible. I'll send you a copy of my real signature. After hanging up, I stood motionless. The house wasn't even sold yet, and they were already trying to leverage it for debt. It wasn't enough for me to leave. They still wanted to take advantage of me while I was here. In the afternoon, I called Mr. Jenkins and briefly explained the situation. His voice was firm. Don't worry, Liv. Once the sale is closed, any undrawn mortgage or loan against the property will be void. I'll ensure our sales contract takes precedence. I continued packing that afternoon. Each object in a box was a final punctuation mark. Martha came back with 2 bags of food and a coffee. I heard from Mr. Davis, she said. You did the right thing selling it quickly. Otherwise, they would have found more ways to tie you down. That evening, Justin came home earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen when I heard the door. He walked in, looked at the stacked boxes. Mom, are you leaving? I looked at him, debating whether to answer or stay silent. Finally I said, yes. Justin bit his lip. You don't have to. I cut him off. There's no need to explain. I've already decided. He fell silent, but there was a flicker of anxiety in his eyes. I didn't ask any more questions, not because I didn't want to know, but because words were no longer necessary. When he went up to his room, I returned to the table, opened my leather notebook, and drew a line. Tomorrow, sign the sales contract. Tomorrow this house would no longer be mine or theirs. And for me it wouldn't be a loss. It would be a liberation. On Friday morning I woke up with a mix of excitement and caution. Today was the day to sign the sales contract for the house. But before I even got out of bed, I received a strange email. Subject: Request to nullify property sale transaction. Sender: a law firm I had never heard of. The content was brief. Our client, Mr. Justin Smith, claims that the current sale transaction of the house is not legal as he possesses residency rights and equity benefits over said property. We request an immediate halt to all proceedings. I read it twice, then smiled coldly. It was clearly a last-minute desperate move by Justin, but he didn't know. The entire property was in my name, and bank records confirmed there was no notarized shared residency agreement. I immediately called Mr. Jenkins. He let out a small laugh.
Relax, Liv.
This is just an attempt to buy time. We have all the legal documents in order. They have no right to stop this. I had decided not to mention the contract signing to Justin the night before. The less information he had, the safer it was. At noon, I drove to Mr. Jenkins's office. The sky was clear, but a cold wind was blowing. In the meeting room, the file was already perfectly arranged. Mr. Jenkins and my lawyer, Mr. Davis, were both there. You just need to sign here, here, and here, Mr. Davis indicated on each page. The pen in my hand glided smoothly over the paper. Each signature felt like cutting an invisible string. When I finished, I put the pen down and exhaled with relief. Mr. Jenkins carefully collected the documents and nodded. Done. The money will be transferred to your new account within 24 hours. The account is with a different bank. No one but you will have access to it. On the way back, I stopped by a small shop on the outskirts of town and bought a new suitcase. Not too big, but big enough for the essentials for my next chapter. I hadn't decided where I would go yet, but I was sure I wouldn't leave an easy trail to follow. When I got home, Justin and Beth were already there. Beth was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Justin was leaning against the kitchen doorway, watching me with suspicion. Where were you all day, Mom? He asked. I took off my coat and hung it up. Just taking care of some personal matters. Beth then spoke, her tone dripping with acid. I hope those personal matters don't affect this family. I looked her directly in the eye but only smiled. This family affects itself, Beth. She froze for a second, then looked away. That night, as I closed my bedroom door, I placed the new suitcase at the foot of my bed. Only one thought remained in my mind. Tomorrow I will leave, and by the time they realize it, it will be too late. On Saturday morning, I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard loud banging on the door. It wasn't a polite knock, but an urgent, insistent pounding, almost as if they wanted to break it down. I opened it to find two police officers on the doorstep, a man and a woman, both in immaculate uniforms. Mrs. Olivia Smith? The male officer asked. Yes, that's me. He held up a warrant. We have a search warrant for this residence at the request of the complainant, Mr. Justin Smith. It is alleged that you are attempting to conceal shared assets without consent. I remained calmer than they expected. Shared assets? This house is in my name. It's entirely mine. Go ahead, but you won't find anything legal to hold me here. They entered and began to inspect each room. Beth and Justin came running down from upstairs. Beth was still in her pajamas, her hair a mess, but her eyes were bright, as if she expected to see me in handcuffs. Does Mom really think she can sell the house without consulting us? Beth spat out word for word. I looked at her the way you look at a child caught stealing cookies and denying it. I don't think so. I know I can, and I already did. Justin stepped forward, raising his voice. This is the family home. You can't just destroy everything because you're having a tantrum. I let out a laugh, a sound that surprised even me. Family? You call it a family when you plan debts behind my back, forge power of attorney documents, and hire lawyers to block me? The female officer intervened, her tone serious. Sir, ma'am, all the documentation confirms that the property belongs exclusively to Mrs. Smith. This warrant only authorizes us to search, not to confiscate property. There are no signs of a crime here, so we'll be leaving. Beth's face went pale. Justin bit his lip, saying nothing more. When the police left, I walked to the dining table, pulled a thick envelope from my jacket, and placed it on the table. Here is a copy of the sales contract signed yesterday. The transaction is closed. The money is already in a place you will never be able to access. Emily lunged to snatch the envelope, but I pulled it back. No, this is my copy. You'll receive the official documents from the lawyer in a few days. From this moment, you have exactly 4 days to find another place to live. A heavy silence fell over the room. No more banging, no more police, just the naked truth. Justin stared at me with a mixture of shock and panic. Beth turned away, clenching her fists so tight her knuckles turned white. I picked up my coffee cup. I took a sip and spoke slowly. I told you. By the time you understood, it would already be too late. On Sunday morning, as I was packing more boxes, I heard a crash downstairs. When I went down, I froze. Justin and Beth were tearing the living room apart. Drawers were pulled out, papers scattered all over the floor. What are you doing? I yelled. My voice echoed louder than I expected. Beth looked up, her eyes as sharp as knives. We're looking for the sales documents. You have no right to do this. If we find them, we'll nullify the transaction. I walked straight to the center of the room, standing in front of the drawer Beth had just opened. You dare touch another thing of mine and I'm calling the police right now. Justin grabbed a stack of papers, but I slapped them out of his hand. The sheets flew through the air. This is my medical certificate. How low are you willing to go? Don't pretend, Mom. Justin snarled. You've changed. You're not the one who used to put the family first. Now all you do is think about yourself. I let out a dry laugh. Think about myself? After decades of working tirelessly, paying off debts, buying this house for you, taking care of your children, silently enduring your wife's veiled insults? If this is the first time I'm thinking of myself, then it's long overdue. Beth lunged towards me, pointing a finger in my face. We're not leaving. You can't kick us out. I stepped even closer, my voice as cold as ice. I'm not kicking you out. The new owner will. And when the police come to back them up, don't expect me to intervene. Justin's face turned red. His hand clenched into a fist. I saw the fire burning in his eyes, but he didn't dare do anything. Maybe because he knew that if he crossed that line, the consequences would no longer be just a family matter. I have endured enough, I said slowly. You've gotten used to me staying silent, but my silence no longer means acceptance. Beth let out a scornful laugh, but my voice rose above it. In 4 days I will hand over the keys to the new owner. If you are still here, they will call the police and I will be on their side. They both stood there, petrified, out of excuses, just glares filled with resentment. I bent down, picked up the papers from the floor, and put them back in the drawer, slamming it shut with so much force that the whole room shook. If you touch my things one more time, there will be no warning. Then I went up to my room, leaving them in the middle of the mess, and the truth they could no longer change. That afternoon, I decided to leave the house for a few hours to get some fresh air. I went to a small coffee shop in the center of town. I sat in a quiet corner with a book and a cappuccino. I had barely read a few pages when my phone started vibrating nonstop. The first message was from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Harrison. Liv, what's going on at your house? I see a moving truck parked out front. They're taking things out. I called her immediately. Can you explain? 2 young men. Beth is giving them orders. They're loading a large wardrobe and the dining room table. I thought you were moving out. I gripped the phone. No, that's mine. Without thinking, I left the coffee shop and drove back. When I arrived, the scene made my blood boil. The truck was open, already full of furniture, most of which was on my list to take with me. Beth was in the yard on the phone, pointing for the men to continue. Justin was nowhere to be seen. I screeched to a halt. I slammed the car door so hard that everyone turned to look at me. Put everything on the ground now, I shouted. My voice boomed through the air. Beth scowled. Mom, you're back early. I was just helping you get your things out faster. You're busy. I walked to the truck and stood in front of it, blocking the way. This is my property. If you take one more thing out of this house, I'm calling the police right now. The 2 men looked at each other and put the furniture down. They clearly didn't want any trouble. Beth approached, her voice low and venomous. You're overreacting. We have rights too. I took out my phone and dialed the police station directly. Your rights end at the front door of this house, and this house will soon no longer be yours. Hearing me speak to the police, Beth turned around, muttering insults. The truck left within minutes, leaving the furniture scattered at the entrance. I stood there looking at the mess, my heart still racing. A part of me wanted to cry with rage, but the clarity I felt was stronger. This was proof they were willing to act behind my back to break the law. That night, I sent all the photos and Mrs. Harrison's testimony to my lawyer, Mr. Davis. He replied briefly. Let them keep digging their own hole. It will make it easier for us to win. I closed the email, looked at the ransacked room and told myself, just 2 days left. 2 days and this will all be over. The next morning, I got an unusually early call from Mr. Davis's office. His voice was grave. Liv, you need to know this. Last night, Justin contacted another agency claiming you have lost legal capacity and asking for help to stop the sale of the house. I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Legal capacity? On what grounds? He submitted a copy of a psychiatric evaluation, but the doctor's signature is an obvious forgery. I called the clinic listed on the paper, and they confirmed they have no record of you as a patient. I laughed with contempt, though inside I was seething. They're getting desperate. They are, Mr. Davis said. But this is serious. If we don't act fast, they could delay the sale. I recommend you come to the office today to sign an official rebuttal accompanied by a valid medical certificate. I agreed and immediately called Dr. Peterson, my family doctor for over 10 years. Within an hour, I had a certificate of sound mental health in my hands, complete with his signature and official red seal. On the way to Mr. Davis's office, I thought about every move Justin and Beth had made. Forgery, trespassing, attempted theft, and now fabricating a story about my incompetence to strip me of my rights. Each move was a stab in the back, but it was also a nail in their own coffin. At the office, Mr. Davis already had the documents ready. We'll file the rebuttal today. Additionally, I'll request a formal investigation for medical document forgery. If intent to defraud is proven, this will become a criminal matter. I signed each page with a steady hand. Mr. Davis, I want to see this through to the end. No more concessions. They need to pay for what they've done. He nodded. I understand. When I got home at noon, I saw Justin sitting on the porch, phone in hand, avoiding my gaze. Beth wasn't there. I walked past him, but I heard him say, "Mom, this is going too far." I turned and faced him. Too far? The day you decided to deceive me, it had already gone too far, and now there's no turning back. Justin opened his mouth, but I had already gone inside and shut the door. There was no room left for pity. That afternoon, Mr. Davis sent an email. The rebuttal has been accepted by the court. The sale of the house will proceed as planned. The investigation into the document forgery will begin this week. Reading it, I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in weeks I truly smiled. Only 2 days left. On Monday morning, I was checking my list of boxes when the doorbell rang. On the porch was a woman in a dark suit holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Olivia Smith?" she asked. "That's me. I'm a social worker from Adult Protective Services. We've received a report that you may be a victim of financial abuse, and we need to intervene urgently." I frowned. "A report from whom?" "That information is confidential," she replied professionally. "But I need to ask you a few questions, and I may need to check your living conditions." I understood immediately. Justin or Beth had called, but this time they were trying to pose as saviors, feigning concern to delay the sale of the house. "Please come in," I said, keeping my voice calm. The social worker opened her notebook and began asking about my income, my bank accounts, and my health. I answered clearly, providing Dr. Peterson's medical certificate and the statement from my new bank account. "That's strange," she commented, "because the report describes you as a frail elderly person unable to manage your finances who was forced to sign documents against her will." I let out a laugh, though there was nothing funny about it. I suppose they forgot to mention that I was the one who initiated the sale of the house, and that I signed all the documents myself in front of witnesses. When the social worker reviewed the sales contract and supporting documents, her expression softened. "It seems someone is trying to exploit the system to make your life difficult. I'll note this in my report and close the case today." Before she left, she added, "If they file any more false reports, that will constitute a violation of the law." I nodded, thanked her, and closed the door. Indignation burned inside me, but I also felt a slight relief. Another one of their schemes had been dismantled. That afternoon, Martha came by with a bag of freshly baked donuts. When I told her what happened, her eyes widened. "They have no shame. Only 2 days left, Liv. Hang in there." Together we arranged the last of the boxes. My suitcase was packed with the documents and contracts stored in a portable safe. As night fell, with the street lights casting shadows in the empty living room, I stood and looked around. The faded walls, the bare nails where photos once hung. There was nothing left to tie me to this place. I whispered into the void. Just 48 more hours and it will all be over. And I knew that this ending would be nothing like what Justin and Beth had imagined. The next morning I received an email from Mr. Jenkins with the subject line, "Change in handover date." The message was brief. "The buyer has requested to take possession of the house 1 day early." This means we will complete all paperwork this afternoon. If you agree, I will handle everything. I read it again to make sure I wasn't mistaken. This afternoon meant that Justin and Beth would have less than 10 hours before losing all rights to the house. I called Mr. Jenkins immediately. I agree. Do it as quickly as possible and keep it quiet. He chuckled softly. Understood. I'll bring the final documents to your house at 3 p.m. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, feeling a renewed energy surge through me. My departure would be sooner than expected, and they wouldn't have time to react. At noon, Justin and Beth still hadn't returned. I took the opportunity to call the moving company, asking them to come that very afternoon. Martha was also there to help me supervise. We worked without a break. The boxes were lined up. The suitcase was closed, and the portable safe was ready by the door. Around 2 o'clock, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Beth got out of the car smiling. But when she saw the moving truck parked in front of the house, her smile vanished. What is this? What do you think you're doing, Mom? I didn't answer right away. I continued signing papers with the movers. Justin got out of the car frowning. Mom, you said we still had 2 days. I looked him straight in the eye. The plan changed. I'm handing over the house this afternoon. Beth froze. No, you can't. I interrupted her, my voice icy. I can, and I already did. The buyer wanted to move up the date and I accepted. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, this will no longer be your home. Justin took a step toward me, furious. You're trying to humiliate us. I smiled with disdain. No, this is the consequence of your choices. At 3 o'clock sharp, Mr. Jenkins arrived. We signed the last papers in the living room with Martha and 2 movers as witnesses. As soon as I lifted the pen, Mr. Jenkins confirmed, the transaction is complete. The new owner will be here to pick up the keys in an hour. I put the contract in my purse and turned to Justin and Beth. I'll be gone before they arrive. I suggest you do the same. Beth opened her mouth to protest but couldn't find the words. Justin stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor. I walked out the door with my suitcase in hand, Martha by my side. The air outside was cool and surprisingly light. That afternoon it would all end, and this time on my terms. As Martha and I were pushing my suitcase toward the car, a black SUV swerved sharply and pulled into the driveway. The door flew open. 2 men in suits got out, followed by a middle-aged woman with a stern expression. The woman approached me directly, pulling a stack of documents from her briefcase. Mrs. Olivia Smith, I am the lawyer for Mr. Justin Smith and Mrs. Beth Smith. We are here to serve you with a temporary restraining order to halt the handover issued by the district court. I listened to every word, feeling no fear. On what grounds is this order based? My client alleges that you sold the property below market value in order to conceal shared assets, causing prejudice to their rightful inheritance claims. She read from the paper. I laughed softly. This house is not a shared asset, and they have no inheritance rights as long as I am alive. That order won't last 24 hours. Martha stepped forward. She's just buying time and she knows it. One of the men in suits intervened, demanding that I stop moving my things until the order was reviewed. I looked at them, then at Mr. Jenkins, who had just come out with his briefcase. Mr. Jenkins raised an eyebrow. This morning I submitted all legal property documents to the court. This order is based on false information. I'm calling the judge right now. While Mr. Jenkins was on the phone, I turned on my phone's voice recorder. Please repeat the accusation so I can have it on record. The lawyer hesitated but ended up reading the full text. Her voice was recorded word for word. A few minutes later, Mr. Jenkins returned with a cold smile. The judge has already reviewed the case. The restraining order has been immediately nullified. You all should leave before the police arrive to support the new homeowner. The lawyer's face hardened. She stuffed the papers back in her bag and turned away without another word. The 2 men followed her, visibly annoyed. Beth, who had been on the porch the whole time, stormed down and shouted, Mom will pay dearly for betraying us. I looked at her, my voice grave and clear. No, Beth, you will pay for confusing my kindness with weakness. Less than an hour later, the new owner's car pulled into the driveway. They shook my hand, received the keys, and went into the house. Justin and Beth remained there, motionless, as if they couldn't believe it was all over. Martha and I got in the car. As we pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the image of those two people standing on the porch, lost in a space that no longer belonged to them. And I knew I had won this battle fair and square. Not even 10 minutes had passed since we left the street when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Mrs. Smith?" A deep male voice. "This is Detective Miller from the Sheriff's Department. I need you to come to the station this afternoon regarding an ongoing investigation." I frowned. "What matter?" "There's a complaint stating that you stole personal belongings from Mr. Justin and Mrs. Beth Smith during the process of moving out of the recently sold house. We need you to come in and clarify the situation." I let out a laugh this time, not hiding the sarcasm. They are very persistent. "Regardless, I need you to appear so everything can be officially recorded." "The sooner the better," the detective said, his tone serious but not threatening. Martha looked at me when I hung up. "Another trick." "Yes, but this time I'm not just going to defend myself," I replied. We stopped by the storage unit first. I wanted to pick up several boxes of documents I had already prepared. Invoices, receipts, photographs of every piece of furniture in the house before I moved, along with proofs of purchase, everything with date signatures and bank records. At the station, Detective Miller met me in a small room. He opened a thin folder. "Mrs. Smith, this is the list of items the complainants alleged you took illegally. A set of sofas, wall paintings, a coffee maker, and a portable safe." Calmly, I placed each photo and receipt on the table. "Here is the invoice for the sofa purchase from a furniture store in 2018 in my name. Here is the receipt for the painting acquired at an exhibition in the city, also in my name. The coffee maker was a Christmas gift I bought for myself last year, and the portable safe." I placed the warranty certificate in front of him, purchased with my credit card with the bank statement included. Detective Miller reviewed each document, his expression shifting from doubt to a certain interest. "You're very well prepared. I knew they would try everything. That's why I didn't leave any loose ends." After nearly half an hour, he closed the folder. "I will note in the report that this complaint is baseless. If you wish, you can file a counterclaim for false accusation." I gave a small smile. "I'll consider it. But believe me, detective, I don't forget." Leaving the station, each step felt lighter, not because they had failed again, but because I understood that each attack only made me stronger. In the afternoon, the sun gilded the new path I was taking, and this time there was no shadow of the old house behind me. That night, alone in my newly rented apartment, a yellow lamp cast a dim light on the empty table. The silence was so profound I could hear the clock ticking. Although everything was almost resolved, my heart still felt heavy. My lawyer, Mr. Davis, called. His voice was grave, measured. "Liv, I just received a report from the investigator. There's something you need to know." I swallowed hard. "What is it?" "Last week, while you were busy with the sale, Beth tried to open a line of credit in your name. She used forged documents. Luckily, the bank became suspicious and rejected the application, but it's clear they haven't stopped." I closed my eyes in silence. A part of me wasn't surprised, but it still felt like the air had been knocked out of me. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll think about what to do." After hanging up, I went out onto the balcony. The night was still, the air was cool, lighted windows in the buildings across the street. Maybe families having dinner together. Laughing, a simple scene I was no longer a part of. I leaned against the railing, letting the memories flood in. Family meals, Justin's laughter as a child, the proud look in my husband Richard's eyes every time we overcame a challenge. Now it was all a distant echo. Back in the room, I opened the small wooden box I always carried with me. Inside were some old photos. Justin with messy hair smiling next to the treehouse, a family photo at Christmas, all of us in red sweaters, and a letter Richard wrote to me. The ink now faded with time. I touched each item, feeling like I held a lifetime in my hands. A life I had given away only to end up with this distance. The phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "You think it's over, Mom?" "Not yet." I knew it was Beth, but I didn't open it again. I no longer had the strength to reply or to be angry. All that was left was a quiet sadness, like a fog covering everything. I put the phone down. I sat there in the dark. I had won in a sense, but I felt like I had lost more than just a house. Maybe because this victory meant putting an end to any hope of preserving what was once called a family. Before going to sleep, I closed the wooden box and put it in a drawer. Outside, the city continued to breathe. Life went on, and I just kept repeating to myself in silence, let tomorrow be different. Or at least I have to believe it will be. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The dawn light came in clear and warm, more so than any other day I could remember in months. I made myself a black coffee. No sugar, no milk, a pure bitterness like the feeling of that moment. Lucid, orderly, with no room for old attachments. I opened the drawer. I took out the wooden box. Inside were the photos, the letter, and the key to the old house. I looked at them one last time. There was no longer a sharp pain in my chest. They were still part of my memories, but they no longer had power over me. I put them all in an envelope, sealed it, and sent it to the storage unit with the other boxes. Memories, just like possessions, should also be kept in a safe place where no one can desecrate them. The phone rang. It was Martha. Liv, what are your plans for today? I'm going to close my old bank account, cut all remaining ties with them, I replied, my voice light. Martha laughed. I'll give you a ride. Consider it your official farewell tour. We went to the bank where I requested to transfer all the money to a new account completely separate from the old one. The bank teller asked if I wanted to keep the old account open. I just shook my head. Signing the closure document felt like shutting a rusty, jammed door that had been stuck for years and finally setting it free. At noon, I arrived at Mr. Davis's office. He handed me a file with all the legal paperwork to protect my assets and prevent Justin and Beth from accessing them. You're safe now, Olivia, he said. And for the first time, I completely believed those words. After leaving the office, Martha and I had lunch at a small restaurant by the lake. The wind carried the fresh scent of water. The sunlight sparkled on the bright surface. I realized I was sitting up straight, not hunched over, as if trying to protect myself from an invisible blow. When I returned to the apartment, I stood on the balcony, looking out at the street. Cars coming and going, people walking their dogs, the laughter of children playing in the nearby park. The world kept on living, and so did I. But this time for myself. I took a deep breath, relaxed my shoulders, and let a real smile emerge. It wasn't because I had gotten revenge, but because I had pulled myself out of the swamp. They no longer had any right to touch my life. That afternoon, I organized my desk again and opened a blank page. I wrote the first line. Day one of a new beginning. And I knew that from that moment on, I could write the rest of my own story without anyone else holding the pen. A week later, the rhythm of my life had completely changed. There were no more tense mornings or angry footsteps coming down the stairs. Instead, I listened to sparrows chirping by the window, and the aroma of coffee filled my small, tidy kitchen. I started dedicating time to things I had long forgotten. In the mornings, I walked in the nearby park where the maple trees were turning shades of yellow and red. Every step felt light, without the urgency of returning to face the coldness of the old house. I realized that for all that time, I had been living like a guest in my own life. Now I was truly its owner. One Tuesday afternoon, I attended a pottery class at the town arts center. Sitting at the wheel, my hands shaped the soft clay as if I were reshaping my own existence. There were a few new people in the class, and we chatted as if we had known each other forever. No one asked about my past, and I didn't have to explain anything. There I was, just Olivia, a woman learning to create something beautiful. Martha visited often, bringing cheerful stories from her volunteer community. One day, she invited me to join the town's beautification group. Together, we planted flowers around the lake, our hands covered in dirt, but laughing nonstop. I realized I hadn't laughed so much in a long time, and not out of sarcasm or defense, but out of genuine joy. In the evenings, I would sit by the window to read or write a few lines in my journal. I wrote about the little things I was grateful for. A hot cup of tea on a rainy day, a kind greeting from the doorman, the golden sunset painting the lake. When there was no one left to fear, every ordinary moment became precious. One weekend, I invited some new neighbors over for dinner. We shared food, life stories, and laughter that filled the apartment. Looking around the table, I understood with absolute clarity. Happiness is not something that has to be bought with suffering. True happiness is feeling safe being yourself, and being surrounded by those who respect you. Before going to sleep, I stood on the balcony and watched the city lights twinkle. Inside me, everything was calm, like the tranquil surface of the lake. I said to myself in a low voice, I've taken my life back, and this time it belongs completely to me. That feeling I knew then was true happiness. This story is a reminder that the love and sacrifice of parents cannot be seen as an infinite obligation. When family ties are replaced by abuse and exploitation, choosing to leave is not running away, but protecting one's own dignity and peace. Sometimes loving yourself is the only way to keep living. And it's also a warning to others. Affection must be nurtured with respect, not assumed to be eternal. Tales of Auntie Grace.